My friend Brenda bought a beautiful house outside Cincinnati 7 years ago, and the yard came with a curse. Heavy clay soil, the kind of clay that turns into solid concrete in August and sticky brown glue every spring. The kind of clay you can shape into a pot and bake into pottery if you wanted to. For 3 solid years, Brenda fought that clay. She amended it with truckloads of compost. She tilled it. She added gypsum. She added sand. She built raised beds on top of it. She killed every plant she put in. By year 4, she was ready to give up gardening entirely and put down gravel and call it done. Then her neighbor Margaret walked over one Saturday morning. Margaret had been gardening on the same clay for 40 years, and her yard was the most beautiful one in the entire neighborhood. Massive clumps of blue flowering perennials, tall ornamental grasses swaying in the breeze, drifts of yellow daisies and purple spikes that bloomed for months on end. Margaret looked at Brenda's frustrated face and said something that completely changed how Brenda thought about gardening. She said, "Stop fighting your soil. Find the plants that love it instead." Then Margaret walked Brenda through her own yard and pointed out 9 plants that not only tolerate heavy clay, but actually prefer it. Plants that grew up over millions of years on prairie clay. Plants whose deep taproots crack apart hard clay, subsoils naturally, and turn that horrible compacted dirt into rich, loamy soil over the course of a few years. Plants that ignore drought, ignore poor drainage, ignore extreme summer heat, and put on a flower show that makes other yards look pathetic by comparison. Brenda planted those 9 plants over the course of one weekend. 3 years later, her yard is the showpiece of the entire street. The clay is still there. She never amended it. She never tilled it again. She just stopped fighting and started planting the right plants. That is what today's video is about. 9 perennials that absolutely thrive in heavy clay soil and that turn the worst gardening curse into the easiest garden you will ever maintain. Before we get into the list, you need to understand exactly why some plants love clay while others die in it. Heavy clay soil holds water tightly between tiny particles. That can be wonderful for plants whose roots evolved in regular moisture. The same clay also gets very compacted, very low in oxygen, and very hot in summer. Most modern garden flowers, especially the breeding-driven hybrids sold at chain garden centers, were bred for fluffy, loose, loamy soils. They simply do not have the root anatomy to survive in dense, compacted dirt. The plants on today's list are completely different. Most of them are American or Eurasian prairie natives, evolved over millions of years in heavy prairie soils that bake hard in August and turn to mud in April. They have deep taproots up to 15 feet long that punch through hard clay layers, find moisture far below the surface, and gradually break apart the compaction over the years. Or they have spreading fibrous root systems that hold the soil together and resist erosion on slopes. Either way, these are plants that look at your sticky brown clay and say, yes, this is exactly what I evolved for. The second thing to know is that almost every plant on today's list is one of the easiest perennials in all of gardening to grow. Once it is in the ground, they want 0 fertilizer. They want minimal water after establishment. They tolerate drought and rain in equal measure, and they live for decades from a single planting. The third thing to know is that fighting clay with sand or compost actually makes things worse in many cases. Adding sand to clay creates concrete. Adding shallow compost on top of clay makes a thin organic layer over an unchanged clay subsoil, and roots stop at the boundary. The far better strategy is to plant deep taproot perennials like the ones on this list. Let those roots crack apart the subsoil naturally over 4 or 5 years, and the soil structure improves itself for free. If you are new to Everbloom Garden, welcome. This is the channel for real American gardeners who want plants that actually work in real American yards. New video every single week. Hit subscribe and ring the bell. I will link related videos in the description below. Now let's dig into the 9 clay-loving plants. The first plant on our list is one of the most architectural and graceful Native American grasses, and a plant that absolutely thrives in any heavy clay soil from the Atlantic to the Rocky Mountains. Switchgrass. Latin name, Panicum virgatum. Switchgrass is one of the iconic plants of the original American tallgrass prairie that once covered the entire Midwestern United States. Modern selections grow in upright clumps, 3 to 6 feet tall, with narrow blue-green or steel-blue summer foliage that turns rich golden bronze in autumn and stays standing through winter. In late summer and fall, the plant sends up airy panicle flower heads above the foliage, packed with thousands of tiny pink and gold florets that catch the light beautifully and rustle in the slightest breeze. Hardy from zones 4 through 9, switchgrass wants full sun and average to moist, well-drained soil, but absolutely tolerates and even prefers heavy clay. It is one of the most adaptable ornamental grasses you can plant in America. Plant clumps 2 to 3 feet apart, water through the first month, and after that, essentially never. My top picks: Heavy Metal is a classic upright steel blue selection that has been a garden standard for 30 years and is still arguably the most reliable switchgrass for any American clay soil garden. Northwind has the most rigid columnar habit in the family and stands perfectly upright even in fierce summer storms or wet snow loads. Shenandoah has stunning red-tinted summer foliage that deepens to rich burgundy by fall, giving you a much warmer color palette than the standard blue selections. Cape Breeze is a compact selection at 3 feet for smaller spaces or container plantings on a sunny patio. Cheyenne Sky has dramatic, deep red-purple foliage that turns wine red in fall, looking absolutely stunning when backlit by autumn's sun. Prairie Sky is one of the bluest selections available, with intense steel blue blades that glow in summer light. All 6 thrive in clay and look beautiful from spring through winter, requiring no staking, no fertilizer, and essentially no care once they are established. The plant is also one of the most ecologically valuable additions to any American yard. Native bees nest in the hollow stems over winter, and goldfinches and sparrows feed on the seed heads through fall and into snowy months. One trick: cut the entire clump down to about 6 inches above the ground in late winter, just before the new spring growth pushes. That single annual chore is the entire maintenance. Within 2 months, the new spring blades emerge and the cycle starts over. Second on the list is one of the most beautiful and underused American native perennials, and a plant whose feathery foliage turns spectacular golden colors in fall. Amsonia, also called blue star, Latin name Amsonia hubrichti, or Amsonia tabernamontana. Amsonia produces upright clumps 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, with narrow needle-like foliage that emerges fresh green in spring. In May, the plant erupts in clouds of tiny, soft sky-blue star-shaped flowers, covering the entire clump for about 3 weeks. After bloom, the foliage stays beautifully green and feathery through summer, and then in October the entire plant turns the most spectacular golden yellow color, looking exactly like a glowing torch in the autumn garden. Amsonia hubrichti won Perennial Plant of the Year in 2011 for very good reason. Hardy from zones 4 through 9, Amsonia wants full sun to partial shade and average to moist soil, including heavy clay, It is exceptionally adaptable and will tolerate periodic drought once established. Plant clumps 2 feet apart, water through the first month, and after that the plant takes care of itself for decades. My top picks. Amsonia hubrichtii has the finest threadleaf foliage that gives it the most dramatic fall color of any Amsonia, and is the variety I recommend most strongly to any first-time Amsonia grower. Amsonia tabernaemontana has broader lance-shaped leaves and a slightly different presence in the bed, but the same beautiful soft blue spring blooms. Blue Ice is a compact 18-inch selection of tabernaemontana for smaller gardens, or the front of a border where the species would be too tall. Storm Cloud has stunning dark purple-tinted spring foliage that emerges burgundy and gradually turns the typical green for summer, then turns gold in fall. Starstruck is a more compact version of hubrichtii at about 2 feet tall. String Theory is one of the newest selections with extra fine threadleaf foliage. All 6 thrive in clay and make excellent specimen plants for any sunny border. One overlooked benefit: Amsonia is essentially deer-proof and rabbit-proof. The sap inside the stems is mildly toxic and bitter, and animals leave the plant completely alone. In deer-heavy properties where many other perennials are constantly browsed down, Amsonia stands untouched and beautiful from spring through fall. Number 3 is one of the most cheerful late summer flowers in any American garden, and an absolute prairie native that laughs at the worst clay imaginable. Heliopsis, also called false sunflower or oxeye sunflower, Latin name Heliopsis helianthoides. Heliopsis produces tall, upright clumps, 3 to 5 feet tall, topped from July through September with bright golden yellow daisy flowers, about 2 to 3 inches across, with raised brown or green central cones. Each plant produces hundreds of flowers across the bloom season, and a mature drift in full bloom looks like a small forest of sunshine. Hardy from zones 3 through 9, making this one of the most cold-hardy plants on this list. Heliopsis wants full sun and average to clay soil. It is a tough native of the American Midwestern prairie and tolerates heavy clay, drought, heat, and humidity equally well. Plant clumps 2 feet apart, water through the first month, then walk away. My top picks. Summer Sun is the classic single-flowered golden yellow variety and the most widely available form at any quality garden center, and a workhorse that has been planted in millions of American yards. Lorraine Sunshine has unusual cream and green variegated foliage that looks beautiful even before the flowers appear in summer. Bleeding Hearts has rich, orange-red flowers and is a striking newer selection that adds warmth to a sea of yellow. Tuscan Sun is a compact selection at about 2 feet tall for the front of a border where the standard species would be too tall. Burning Hearts has scarlet red and gold bicolor flowers that look like miniature suns. Sunburst is another compact selection with extra large flower heads. All 6 are pollinator magnets, attracting bees and butterflies all summer long, and the seed heads after bloom feed goldfinches and chickadees well into fall and early winter. The plant is also one of the longest-lived perennials in any American garden, with single specimens routinely living 20 or 30 years from one planting. Fourth on the list is one of the most majestic and long-lived prairie natives in any American garden, and a plant whose taproot cracks open compacted clay like it was nothing. Baptisia, also called false indigo or wild indigo, Latin name Baptisia australis. Baptisia produces large stately mounded clumps 3 to 4 feet tall and wide, with attractive blue-green clover-like foliage that emerges asparagus-like in spring and unfurls into elegant lush mounds. In May and June, the plant sends up tall flower spikes packed with sweet pea-shaped flowers in deep indigo blue, soft yellow, white, rose, or bicolor combinations. Each individual plant in full bloom looks like a small flowering shrub. After bloom, attractive black seed pods form along the stems and rattle in the wind for the rest of the year. Baptisia australis is so deeply rooted, sometimes 15 feet down, that it is essentially impossible to transplant once established. Pick the right spot the first time. Hardy from zones 3 through 9, Baptisia wants full sun and average to clay soil. It absolutely thrives in heavy clay and is one of the longest-lived perennials you can plant, with a single specimen often living 40 or 50 years from a single planting. Plant clumps 3 feet apart and give them the space, because mature plants are big. My top picks. Baptisia australis is the classic deep indigo blue species and the most widely grown form, an American prairie native that has been cultivated in formal American gardens since colonial times. Carolina moonlight has soft, creamy yellow flowers and a slightly more upright habit. Cherries Jubilee is a stunning newer selection with bicolor red and yellow flowers that look like little flames on the spike. Pink Truffles has soft pink flowers, an unusual color in Baptisia, and a lovely surprise. Solar Flare has flowers that open yellow and age to soft orange-red as they mature, giving every spike a constantly changing color quality. Twilight Prairie Blues is a hybrid form with violet-purple flowers and bronze-tinted edges. All 6 are essentially indestructible once established, and they all turn black after first frost, giving the bed dramatic winter texture and architectural interest if you leave the seed pod standing through winter. Many gardeners harvest the dried black pods for indoor flower arrangements or holiday wreaths, where they hold their dramatic appearance for years. Plant number 5 is one of the most underused tall perennials in American gardens, and a plant that brings dramatic vertical color to any clay soil bed. Ironweed, Latin name Vernonia noveboracensis, or Vernonia fasciculata. Ironweed produces tall, upright clumps, 4 to 7 feet tall, topped from August through October, with flat clusters of small, fluffy, intense royal purple flowers. The color is so saturated that a mature ironweed in full bloom essentially glows from across the yard. Butterflies and bees adore the flowers, and the plant is a magnet for monarchs in late summer. Hardy from zones 4 through 8, ironweed wants full sun to very light shade and moist clay soil. This is a plant that genuinely thrives in poorly drained heavy soils where most flowers would rot, including low spots that hold water after rain. Plant clumps 3 feet apart, water through the first month, and after that the plant essentially manages itself. My top picks: Vernonia noveboracensis, also called New York ironweed, is the standard tall species and grows up to 7 feet in good clay soil, perfect as a back-of-border anchor in any sunny prairie-style planting. Iron butterfly is a compact selection at about 3 feet tall, perfect for smaller gardens where the species would be too tall, and is a favorite of butterfly enthusiasts. Vernonia lettermanni has very fine, narrow, needle-like foliage and grows in a more compact, graceful mound about 2 feet tall, looking almost like a fine ornamental grass, when not in bloom. Southern Cross is a hybrid form with brighter purple flowers and slightly more compact habit at 4 to 5 feet. Vernonia gigantea is a giant species reaching 8 feet in good conditions, the absolute showpiece of any prairie bed. All 5 bring late summer drama to any clay soil bed and are absolute monarch butterfly magnets at the most critical migration window of the year. One important tip: even though ironweed is a tall plant, It almost never needs staking when grown in full sun on poor clay. The strong roots and lean conditions produce sturdy stems that hold up through summer storms. All right, we are halfway through our 9 clay-loving perennials. Before we move on, I want to share something every clay soil gardener needs to hear. The clay you have under your lawn is probably not as bad as you think it is, but it absolutely needs different management than fluffy, loamy soil. Here is the rule. Do not till clay. Do not turn it over. Do not dig deeply into it. The moment you disturb compacted clay, you destroy whatever soil structure has formed naturally, and you make the problem worse. Instead, practice what is called no-till gardening on clay soil. Plant your perennials by digging only the planting hole, not the entire bed. Mulch the surface heavily with shredded leaves or composted bark. Let earthworms and roots do the work of opening up the clay over time. After 3 or 4 years of letting plants and worms work, the top 6 inches of soil will be rich, loamy, crumbly material, even though the clay subsoil below is still clay. That is exactly what you want. Roots can spread freely through the loose top layer, and the deep roots of plants, like baptisia and switchgrass, break apart the subsoil. Within 10 years, what was a desperate clay yard becomes a thriving rich garden, and you never had to till it once. The other thing to know is that clay soils are actually nutrient-rich. Clay particles are tiny and have a huge surface area, which means they hold on to plant nutrients tightly. Once roots can access that clay, the plants are extremely well fed without any fertilizer. So once your perennials are established and their roots are deep, you will notice that they grow more vigorously than the same plants in lighter soils. That is the gift of clay you have to wait for, but it absolutely arrives. Number 6 is one of the showiest and most beloved old-fashioned cottage flowers in American gardens, and a plant whose feathery cream and pink flower plumes look like floral cotton candy in the bed. Filipendula, also called Queen of the Prairie or meadowsweet, Latin name Filipendula rubra, for the tall American native, or Filipendula ulmaria for the European meadowsweet. Filipendula rubra produces tall upright clumps, 4 to 6 feet high, topped in June and July with massive feathery pink flower plumes that look like clouds of pink cotton candy. The plant is one of the most striking plants you can put in a moist clay bed. Filipendula ulmaria is a smaller European species, at about 2 to 3 feet tall with creamy white frothy plumes and an intensely sweet almond vanilla fragrance. Hardy from zones 3 through 8, Filipendula wants full sun to partial shade and consistently moist clay soil. This is the rare clay-loving plant that genuinely thrives in damp, poorly drained spots, including the edges of ponds, rain gardens, and low areas that other perennials would rot in. Plant clumps 3 feet apart for the tall species, 2 feet for the smaller one. My top picks. Filipendula rubra is the dramatic tall Native American species, growing up to 6 feet in good moist clay, and is a true showpiece of the prairie wetland tradition. Venusta is a deeper rose-pink cultivar of the same species and is even more striking when in full bloom. Filipendula ulmaria aurea has fragrant white flowers above stunning chartreuse gold foliage that glows in any partly shaded clay corner. Variegata has white flowers above cream-edged variegated leaves for an even more dramatic foliage effect. Plena is a double-flowered form of the European species with frothier, creamy white plumes. Magnifica has even taller spikes and larger pink plumes than the standard Venusta. All 6 thrive in moist clay and bring drama to any low, wet corner of your yard. The plant is also one of the very best for filling difficult areas around downspouts, sump pump outlets, and rain gardens. where the soil is consistently damp from runoff, and most other perennials would rot. Plant filipendula in those problem spots, and the curse becomes a feature. The tall American species is one of those rare plants that only thrives in heavy soils. So if you have heavy clay, this is genuinely your moment to shine. Number 7 on our list is one of the most reliable and underused evergreen ground covers in any American garden, and a plant that absolutely thrives where many ground covers fail. Liriope, also called lily turf or monkey grass, Latin name Liriope, in the asparagus family. Liriope produces tight clumps of grass-like dark green strappy foliage, about 12 to 18 inches tall, with upright spikes of small, tight, tubular, cluster-shaped flowers in late summer in violet purple or white. The flowers are followed by glossy black berries that persist into winter. The plant is essentially evergreen in zones 6 and warmer, semi-evergreen in zone 5, and dies back to the ground in zones 3 and 4. Hardy from zones 4 through 9, Liriope wants partial shade to full sun and average to clay soil. It is one of the most adaptable plants in American gardening and will grow in conditions ranging from dry shade to wet sun, all with similar good results. Plant clumps 12 to 15 inches apart for ground cover use, water through the first month, and the patch fills in within 2 seasons. My top picks. Big Blue is the standard form, with deep violet blue flower spikes and rich dark green foliage, the workhorse variety planted in millions of American yards. Variegata has cream and green striped foliage that lights up shaded corners and brightens dim clay beds. Royal Purple has the deepest, darkest purple flower spikes in the family. Monroe White has pure white flowers and is unusual and elegant when planted as edging around a stone walkway. P.D. Ingot has bright chartreuse yellow foliage and pale violet flowers, a brilliant choice for adding light to a dim clay bed under deciduous trees. Silvery Sunproof has cream-edged variegated leaves that hold up beautifully in stronger sun than most variegated forms. All 6 form solid weed-blocking mats that thrive in clay, and the plant is one of the few ground covers that genuinely tolerates the difficult dry shade conditions under mature trees where most other plants give up. Plant number 8 is one of the most graceful, upright, ornamental grasses in any American garden, and a plant that brings movement and texture to a clay soil bed unlike anything else. Feather reed grass, Latin name Calamagrostis acutiflora. Feather reed grass produces tight, upright clumps 3 to 5 feet tall, with narrow green summer foliage and elegant feathery flower plumes that emerge bright pink in June, mature to soft tan by August, and stand beautifully erect through fall and into winter. The plumes catch every breeze and rustle softly, adding a meditative quality to the garden. Hardy from zones 4 through 9, feather reed grass wants full sun and average to clay soil with adequate moisture. It absolutely tolerates heavy clay and even thrives in periodically wet, poorly drained spots. Plant clumps 2 feet apart. My top picks. Carl Förster is the gold standard variety, perennial plant of the year winner in 2001, and the most widely planted ornamental grass in America for very good reason. Its strict columnar form holds up to wind, snow, rain, and storms equally well. Avalanche has dramatic white-striped variegated foliage that lights up any bed at dusk. Eldorado has gold-striped variegation that brightens up shadier corners. Overdam is a slightly more compact variety, with cream-edged leaves and a more refined look. Carl Förster Tall is a taller selection that grows up to 6 feet for dramatic vertical accents at the back of larger borders. Lightning Strike is a striking newer selection with a gold and green stripe pattern that looks electric in afternoon sun. All 6 thrive in clay and look beautiful from spring straight through winter. The grass is also one of the very few clay-loving plants that genuinely qualifies as four-season interest, with fresh green spring blades, pink then tan summer plumes, golden autumn color, and standing tan winter structure. The single annual maintenance is to cut the clump down to about 6 inches above the ground in late winter, just before new growth pushes. The 9th and final plant on our list is one of the most charming and easygoing American natives, and a plant whose cheerful 3-petaled flowers bloom for weeks in early summer: spiderwort, also called tradescantia. Latin name Tradescantia virginiana or Tradescantia ohiensis. Spiderwort produces upright grassy clumps about 18 to 24 inches tall, with long, strappy green leaves and 3-petaled flowers in clusters at the tops of the stems. The flowers come in violet blue, pure white, magenta pink, and bicolor combinations. Each individual flower opens in the morning and closes by mid-afternoon, but a single plant produces dozens of buds that open in succession across about 6 weeks of bloom from late May through July. The plants are absolutely indestructible and are perfect for problem clay spots where many other flowers struggle. Hardy from zones 4 through 9, spiderwort wants full sun to partial shade and clay or average soil with moderate moisture. It is a tough native of the eastern American prairie and tolerates heat, humidity, drought, clay, and partial shade equally well. Plant clumps 18 inches apart. My top picks. Sweet Kate has stunning chartreuse gold foliage with deep blue flowers, an unforgettable color combination that looks like nothing else in the entire perennial world. Concord grape has grape purple flowers and is the most popular standard form, an old-fashioned, reliable choice. Snowcap has pure white flowers and adds elegance to mixed plantings, especially beautiful when planted next to the dark blue forms. Bilberry ice has soft purple flowers tipped with white edges, a charming bicolor effect. Charlotte's Web has variegated cream-edged foliage with pink flowers for an even more layered visual statement. Pink Chablis has soft pink flowers and bright green foliage. All 6 thrive in heavy clay and self-seed gently, perpetuating the patch indefinitely without becoming weedy or aggressive. The plant has a long American history, with the name Tradescantia, honoring John Tradescant, the 17th century English plant hunter and gardener to King Charles I, whose son brought specimens of the American species back to England, where they became some of the earliest American native plants ever cultivated in European gardens. So when you plant Tradescantia today, you are growing one of the very first American native plants ever exported to the world, with a 400-year garden history behind every flower. One trick. After the main bloom flush finishes in early July, cut the entire plant back to about 3 inches above the ground. Within 2 weeks, fresh foliage and a second smaller bloom flush emerges to carry the plant into fall. Before we wrap up, here is how to combine all 9 of these clay-loving perennials into one-yard plan that turns your worst gardening curse into a year-round showpiece. Start by choosing your worst clay corner, the one you have been fighting for years and losing every time. Do not amend the soil. Do not till. Do not bring in truckloads of compost. Just plan to dig individual planting holes for each perennial as you go. Mulch the surface heavily with shredded leaves, and let the deep-rooted natives do the work of opening up the soil over the next 4 years. At the back of the bed, plant tall switchgrass and ironweed for height and dramatic late summer color, both reaching 6 to 7 feet at maturity and creating the vertical anchor that makes the whole bed feel substantial. In the middle row, plant baptisia and feather reed grass as your structural anchors, with baptisia bringing spring-summer indigo blue flower spikes, followed by dramatic black seed pods, and the grass bringing graceful pink to tan plumes that catch every breeze from June through winter. Next to those, plant Amsonia and Heliopsis for the spring blue and summer gold combination that is one of the loveliest color pairings in clay soil gardening, with Amsonia adding spectacular gold fall foliage at the end of the season as a bonus reward. Toward the front, plant Filipendula in any moist or low spot you have, where its dramatic pink plumes will be the showpiece of the entire bed in midsummer. And along the front edge, plant Liriope as a continuous evergreen border with late summer purple flower spikes, mixed with tradescantia in selected spots for the chartreuse gold and deep blue contrast that pulls the whole composition together visually. The entire bed will start looking interesting in May with Amsonia in soft sky blue clouds and fresh tradescantia clusters opening their three-petaled flowers in the morning sun. June and July bring the deep indigo baptisia spikes, the dramatic pink filipendula plumes in moist corners, and the elegant feather reed grass plumes, turning from bright pink to soft tan. August and September, the Heliopsis, golden daisies, and the towering royal purple ironweed take over with their late summer power, drawing monarchs and other butterflies in remarkable numbers. October, the Amsonia turns spectacular golden yellow as one final farewell to the season, and the switchgrass blades deepen to rich bronze. Winter, the standing seed heads, the dried grass plumes, and the architectural baptisia stems carry the bed beautifully through January, with sculptural interest under any snow that falls. The total cost at nursery sizes is around $160 for one of each plant, but a real bargain considering these are decade-long investments rather than annual replacements. The annual maintenance is one late winter haircut on the grasses, taking about 30 minutes for a mature bed, one midsummer cutback on the spiderwort taking about 10 minutes, and that is essentially it. No fertilizing, no tilling, no fighting, no frustration. 2 quick mistakes to avoid before I let you go. The first is amending clay soil heavily before planting these natives. They evolved in unamended prairie clay, and they actually grow weaker, not stronger, in heavily amended beds. Skip the compost mixed deep into the soil. Skip the gypsum. Skip the sand entirely, and just plant directly into the clay you already have. Your plants will be tougher, longer-lived, and more drought-resistant in unamended clay than they ever would be in lavishly amended soil. The only amendment that actually helps these plants is a generous surface mulch of shredded leaves, which decomposes slowly and gradually improves the top few inches of soil over the years without disturbing the deep roots. The second mistake is moving these plants once they are established. Several on this list, especially Baptisia and Amsonia, develop deep taproots within their first 3 years that can reach 6 to 15 feet down into the subsoil. Once that taproot is in place, transplanting almost always kills the plant or sets it back 5 years. Pick your spot the first time, leave the plant alone, and you get decades of reward without any further intervention. If you absolutely must move one, do it in very early spring. Just as new growth pushes, dig as deep and wide as humanly possible, and accept that the plant will sulk for 2 seasons before bouncing back to its previous vigor. And that is the list. 9 perennials that absolutely thrive in heavy clay soil: switchgrass, Amsonia, Heliopsis, Baptisia, ironweed, Filipendula, Liriopa, feather reed grass, and tradescantia. Plant these this spring or fall. Water through the first month, and prepare yourself for a yard where the clay you have been cursing finally becomes the foundation of the most spectacular garden on the block. If this video helped you, please hit the like button. It genuinely does help more folks who are struggling with their own clay yards find this channel and discover plants that will actually thrive for them. Hit subscribe if you have not already, and ring the little bell so you get notified the moment a new video drops every single week. I have a video coming up next week on cold hardy perennials for the harshest northern winters in zones 3 and 4, and another on fragrant flowering plants that will perfume an entire backyard from feet away. Drop a comment below and tell me which clay-loving perennial is already in your yard, or which one you are most excited to add this year, and which U.S. state and zone you are gardening in. I read every single comment, friends, and your stories often inspire next week's videos and help me decide which gardening problems to tackle next on the channel. Until next time, friends, happy planting from all of us here at Everbloom Garden, and may your clay soil finally become the rich, deeply rooted, low-maintenance gardening friend it was always meant to be.